I want to share something that happened last week. I was supposed to go out of town for a follow-up appointment after my surgery, and I'm always a little bit anxious about that drive, so any hesitation that I have about that drive, I usually ignore. So I did, except this time was different. I was given very clear signals not to go. First, it was someone asking me for my time and attention, so it prevented me from getting on the road. Then the gas pumps wouldn't work at the gas station. Then it was someone texting me, asking me, are you going to drive in that? Because it was supposed to rain. And at first I thought, yeah, I need to go to this appointment. But before I could leave town, the sirens started going off, and I knew I couldn't go by this point, of course. So I was starting to acknowledge the signs finally. And that happens a lot when you become more aware. You often pay attention more. And I live somewhere where we usually ignore sirens. They go on and off normally during this time of year, and nothing really happens, but something was being very persistent and protective in that moment. So that theme continued throughout my day. It did storm, and it didn't seem all that bad. I even watched the storm from my window and thought, this isn't very, very bad, but our power went out, which also rarely happens, even though the storm seemed mild. And I even thought it was odd that people were asking me if there was any damage to my property, because why would there be? But when I stepped outside, my neighbors pointed out the damage to their property. There wasn't even a scratch on mine, and they said a tornado had touched down near us, actually a few places right around us, and I hadn't heard a thing about it. Yet the school just a few blocks from my house was damaged, and this trailer was overturned, and there were trees down and all kinds of damage all around me. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, except when you do this work, strange things start to happen, or should I say you become aware of the strange things happening around us. It's always happening. You just don't have increased awareness. You start to see the symbolism, the synchronicities that are appearing around us all the time. You recognize where and how you're taken care of. And you can't deny that there is something very powerful going on. I released some videos about the Terrence Howard interview that I mentioned last week that got a bit of attention. Some positive, plenty negative, and I just would like to say that he may be wrong on some of it. He may not know as much as he says he does, or he may know a lot. He knows something. He's right about something. Much of what he shares I've seen discussed by others. I've shared it somewhat here before. There's a whole stack of books behind me discussing these concepts, quadrivium, for example, and all those connections between light and sound, the flower of life, and all that ties back into it. So he had these visions as a young child and then started lucid dreaming where he could manipulate his dreams, and that's where this knowledge comes from.
He said to me, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be? Now, we were really poor. My dad had just gotten out of prison, for manslaughter. I didn't have much, but I said to him, I want to know how everything works. And at that moment, he used his left hand and he opened up the door. And there was this mansion, big brown doors. And inside of it was this crystalline flowers, big crystalline flowers, like a giant, like 5 feet across. And every time I tried to see his face, he would reach in and hand me another shape. And I was so fascinated with the shapes because they didn't look like the platonic solids. They didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. And he would hand me these shapes. And each shape was different and amazing. And I woke up from that dream. But after that moment, anytime something strange would happen in a dream, I had the powers of inception. Anytime I would be naked at school, I would say, I'm not naked. I must be dreaming. And immediately I would run out of the school or run out of wherever I was, and I would find that mansion again. And I had access to all the knowledge. The proof of it is the 97 patents that I have now.
These abilities do exist within us. They are often suppressed, maybe in part because we would be too powerful. It is thought it goes back to the Salem witch trials where people with mystical knowledge were persecuted, and then in order to survive, people often had to suppress their abilities and knowledge. They even believe that it was an evolutionary thing that we had to evolve to suppress some of these abilities in order to survive. So I myself had a vision of the DNA strand early in my journey, and I knew it was significant. So much that the DNA strand is part of the Sound Science Soul logo. I didn't even know what it all meant initially, and I still don't understand it completely, but I've come to learn some of the connections. There is actually one thought that sound is in our DNA, for example, and I was in awe when Terrance showed his version of the periodic table and how it looks similar to a DNA strand. There are connections in how everything is related that is not common knowledge. There's much we don't understand yet, or what is understood is sometimes being suppressed or not allowed into the conversation, which is what we're seeing a lot of with Terrance. Most people are calling him crazy. There is a greater level of intuition available to us, whether it's in these gut feelings or the signs that I mentioned earlier, or experiencing actual visions and direction from a higher mind. I would love to hear what your experiences have been doing this work, intuitive things you've experienced. Share them in the comments. Which brings me to a more concrete way that you can start to make connections in your own life. You can become more aware of your brain states and how to use them. And that is Flowtime, the brainwave sensing headband. Now, you don't have to guess if you're in alpha or theta or if meditation is lowering your heart rate. You can get real-time biofeedback, and you can use our special link in the description for a discount and get your own. And then you can experiment with using Brain.fm, the scientifically engineered music. I use it every week to get into a flow state, and you can too. You can get 30 days free by using our special link, again in the description. That's longer than their normal trial period, giving you plenty of time to figure out if you like it as much as I do. So I hope everyone is doing well. Have a great week.